Welcome to Health Education. This is part 1 of 2 parts for health education for the third quarter. For today, we will be talking about disease prevention and control, focusing on communicable diseases. A lesson that we should put in our mind and heart all the time is that an ounce of prevention is always better than a pound of cure, which I think is very timely, especially with this pandemic that we are into right now. When you were in grade 7, you had the lesson on non-communicable diseases. This time, let us talk about communicable diseases. These are diseases that can be transferred from one person, animal, or object to another. Ito po yung mga nakakahawang sakit. What are the factors that influence disease transmission? We have two: environmental factors and socio-economic factors. Environment factors include sanitation, food and water, pollution, and everything that exists in our environment that can cause diseases. If we are not clean with our surroundings and ourselves, we can get sick. If we eat contaminated food or drink contaminated water, we can get sick. Living in a polluted place can also get us sick. And today, not wearing masks and face shields can also get us sick. For socioeconomic factors, cultural practices like not using serving spoons and eating at home or washing hands in basin, which others also use, can possibly give us diseases of others around us. Drinking from a single cup or glass, especially drinking from the same straw with others, may give us diseases. While people living in slums or in places where houses are built together makes people more susceptible to the disease. Kapag may nagkaroon ng sore eyes sa isang bahay, lahat ng kapitbahay niya ay magkakaroon na rin ng sore eyes dahil tabi-tabi lang ang kanilang mga bahay. Chain of infection. Let us see how these diseases travel from one person to another. This is the chain of infection. As you can see, there is no end or beginning in this chain. It just goes around and around as people get infected with these communicable diseases. Let me explain each part in the next slides. Pathogens are the infectious organisms that causes these communicable diseases. Each and every pathogen is responsible for different communicable disease. It also varies. There are pathogens that causes simple diseases, while there are those which can cause deaths. Reservoir is anywhere or anything where a pathogen can live. It can be a human being or things that a sick person be touched. It can be the air we breathe or the seat you took in the jeepney or taxi or grab. It can be the table you use in the restaurant you ate in or the toilet bowl you sat on in the public toilet you went in. But the most common reservoir is the human body. Portal of exit is the way where the pathogen travels from the reservoir. For example, a person with cough and colds sneezes. The pathogen flies to the air and drops on anywhere in front of the sick person. It can be the chair, table, or any object in front of the one who sneezes. In this process, the portal of exit is the nose and the mouth. The pathogen exits the reservoir through its nose and mouth. Mode of transmission is the method on how these pathogens transfer from one person to another. It can be through the air, through contact with the infected person, or through bodily fluids. It depends on what pathogen or communicable disease is transferred. Portal of entry is the way on how these pathogens enter the body of its next victim. Like the portal of exit, it can be any opening of the body depending on the pathogen. It can be through the nose and the mouth or through the skin. While the susceptible host, from the word susceptible, these are people who have low immune system and cannot resist a pathogen. Some pathogens can be killed when it enters a body of a healthy individual, but for babies, since their immune system is still developing, or for older people who have lower immune system because of existing ailments already, they are the ones who are mostly affected by these infectious pathogens. The chain of infection can also be broken if we protect ourselves by having a healthier lifestyle, washing our hands, and being aware of our diseases to be able to protect others also of these diseases. Let us take a closer look on the different pathogens that may affect us. Again, pathogens are the ones who causes diseases. Examples of this are bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoa, and parasitic worms. Virulence is the ability of a pathogen to grow and be many. Invasiveness is its ability to enter a susceptible host, while pathogenicity is its ability to cause diseases. If all these three are found in a pathogen, then there is a greater possibility that it can cause greater infection to a susceptible host. These are the different types of pathogens. Let us have a closer look at each one of them. Bacteria are one-celled organisms, but not all bacteria causes diseases. There are good bacteria and bad bacteria. In our stomach, we have numerous good bacteria, or we call resident bacteria that aids in our digestion. I think you are familiar with Yakult. It has live good bacteria in it. Well, some bacteria are toxin and produces poison called botulism. These are ones that causes sickness. The disease we contract depends on the bacteria we have inside our body. Our resident bacteria helps protect us from this harmful bacteria, but if it still persists, our doctors give us antibiotics to kill them off our body. We could say are brought by parasites to our body. The parasites or insects are just the reservoir and not the pathogen itself. These are the diseases that are caused by bites of these insects and can be simple as lice in our heads to typhus fever and Rocky Mountain spotted fever that may cause death almost immediately. Viruses are smaller than bacteria and our body's worst enemy, as we can see in this pandemic. These viruses are parasites that attack the immune system and place themselves in the body of its host for a long time. It is why most virus-causing diseases have vaccinations. Most of the time, these viruses are hard to cure and may cause death. Fungi, these are organisms that live in dead animals, insects, and even leaves. Most of the time, this causes skin infections like athlete's foot or alipunga. The most common fungi are yeasts, which is used in breads, and mushrooms, which we also eat. If yeasts are not handled properly in making bread, then it may cause diseases also. Not all mushrooms are edible. Some can cause diseases, but sometimes diseases caused by fungi can be lethal, especially when it enters the bloodstream, for it causes inflammation of the organs. Protozoa are larger than bacteria and most are not harmful. These are mostly found in tropical countries like the Philippines. These are your usual kagat ng lamok. But if the mosquito is carrying dengue or malaria, then it becomes lethal. Parasitic worms. It is called such for these are worms that live as parasites inside our bodies. They derive nourishment from its host for it to live. We may have this inside our stomachs, especially if we do not wear our slippers all the time, if we do not wash our hands, and if we eat uncooked and contaminated food. This is why we have deworming twice a year in school to make sure that there are no parasites inside your body. Now, let's look closely on how these diseases travel from one body to another. This is the mode or way on how a pathogen transmits or transfers itself from one host to another. There are different ways on how diseases are transmitted. Let's talk about it one by one. Direct transmission. This happens when we have direct contact with a sick person. It can be through any way listed here. A single handshake can transfer many pathogens at once from one person to another. That is why it is important to wash your hands regularly. Another direct transmission is through food and water. These are directly and instantly felt, for it enters our body through our mouth. This is why you have stomach aches right away if you drank contaminated drinks or ate contaminated food. For example, street food not properly cooked may cause dysentery or salmonella. Early onset of this is LBM. Sometimes, if the food is not properly handled or there are flies or langaw who lay their eggs on the food you ate, then again, there is a possibility of you contracting diseases. There are a lot of possibilities, so make sure you eat clean food and avoid those which you think is not safe to eat. Another direct transmission is through vectors. These are usually brought by insect bites like dengue, malaria, and Japanese encephalitis, which are lethal diseases, for it enters the bloodstream right away. While for indirect transmission, we have droplets or droplet transmission. COVID is an example of this. The pathogen from the reservoir goes out of the body and plays itself to anything around the sick person. If another person holds on to things with these pathogens and touches their mouth or nose, then these pathogens now enter the body of that person. Another example is sore eyes. You will not get it by being in the same place with the one who has it. But if you touch things used by that person, then you touch your eyes, then it is possible that you will have sore eyes too. Another indirect transmission is airborne. This is usually the case for lung diseases. For once a person sneezes and the pathogens are in the air, there is a big possibility that the person close to that person will get the disease too. Let's now see what happens if you already have the pathogen inside your body. There are 4 stages of infection. The incubation stage. This is the time when the pathogen enters your body until you have the first sign of the disease. The problem now arises for sometimes, even though the pathogen is inside your body, symptoms sometimes do not occur. As in the case of COVID, we have symptomatic and asymptomatic. The prodromal stage starts when the symptoms are already seen, like fever. Let me make this clearer. Fever is not the disease itself. Fever is a general symptom that alerts your body that there is something wrong. That is why when you have fever, you do not cure the fever itself, but look for the reason why you are having a fever. Illness stage is when more specific symptoms occur, and it is the time when specific diseases are identified. It is also the reason why doctors cannot know the disease you have right away. They would need to do tests and do checkups for them to identify what is causing the fever or other general symptoms you are having. The convalescence stage is the last stage of infection, where your body already reacted to medication and is recovering from the illness. Sometimes, the body fought the disease by killing the pathogen that caused it, but there are times that the pathogens still live inside the body for a longer time. This depends on what disease you had and how your body copes with this disease. But again, as we said earlier, prevention is better than cure. There are 3 levels of preventing diseases. For primary prevention, this may be done by getting immunization, eating healthy food, drinking lots of water, exercising, and having enough sleep. For COVID-19, this may be done by wearing masks and face shields, washing hands or using alcohol, and not going out of our houses. For the secondary prevention, this happens if you have the disease already. You should undergo proper screening of your disease to make sure that proper treatment will be done. While tertiary prevention or treatment is making sure that the treatment is continuous to avoid long-term complication of the disease. For your activity, check out the instructions on your FB group. Same for the assessment. Kindly check your FB group for the link. This is part 1 for health education for the third grading. The next links will be given in your FB group for the next lessons. Thank you, and I hope you've learned something from watching this video. Stay safe, everyone!